back to the temples and back to these steeples again. And you've got some temple updates for us.
Yeah, I have a huge one here. This is breaking news. Yeah, had we not had a cross on Temple Square, this probably would have been the lead story. So was it last week or the week before, or I just talk about it all the time, the water being pumped out of the Heber Valley Temple, right? And I know I talk about trees and water. Everybody's probably getting really bored of the stories that I bring here. So, but it's very relevant. So I received some pictures from some residents there as they are starting to dig, and already, what do you see there, Bill? Water, right? And the resident I talked to said he thought maybe they'd gone down like 10, 12 feet. I talked to my engineering friend. It's possible that they're striking water even sooner than they thought. And that would, of course, change, they'd have to pump more, all of that, because as we talked about last week and the week before, they're going to have a below ground baptismal font. And because of that, they are eventually going to have to continue to pump up to 300,000 gallons of water, pumping and also dewatering through a gravity system a day. So 300,000 gallons of water a day. And that's not all the millions during construction. So here's the water already. I was just kind of so disheartened to see that. And some might say, well, why can't they just have a above ground baptismal font? Then they wouldn't even have to do that. And we do know a lot of temples that do, have one, or maybe it'll be underground like 6 inches symbolically. But this temple is special because it is a showcase temple. This is a massive temple. It's going to be opulent. It's going to be a destination temple. The main purpose of it is girls' camp, which is located just a couple miles away. And part of girls' camp now, wasn't when I was in girls' camp, is to attend the temple. One of the days of girls' camp, they usually drive the girls, 20 minutes down to go to one of the Provo temples. They want to have a giant showcase temple to take those girls to during girls' camp so that they can have that, special significance, all part of it. And this is why they're not going to budge on this. And this is just going to be a massive, opulent temple. So I saw these pictures and I put out some information on it. I was getting kind of sad. Here we go. And then suddenly, oh my gosh, I was at Costco and I got a message from one of the residents that said they have halted construction. And you all know how horrible the reception is at Costco, right? So I'm walking around like this. I'm going, what? I was like, what is this? Because the judge ruled everything can go ahead. There's still a lawsuit that's going to go in front of the Supreme Court. But the judge says, no, you can start building, even though the lawsuit's still on the table. Hence the pictures of the water. So I was really excited going, oh my gosh, what is happening? I finally ran out into the parking lot. In fact, I had to do that 3 or 4 times. The lady who was manning the front, she finally goes, you don't have to show me your card. I see you running back and forth. I'm like, I'm a podcaster. God damn it. I have to. Anyway, it was a pretty funny moment. But so here is kind of what's going on. It says Judge Jennifer Mabee on September 19th said that the Heber Valley Temple construction cannot proceed until the legal controversy over it is fully settled. So this does have to do with, like we reported last time, the Supreme Court of Utah said, yep, we'll hear this case. We will hear the residents' concerns about the building of this temple. She granted an injunction against the Church of Jesus Christ requested by the Heber residents who are opposed to the new temple. And it's a smart thing to do. Like she says, granting the stay or injunction ensures that if and when the temple is built, it will remain so and not be subject to an order requiring its destruction and removal. See, this is what happened in Cody, too. They continued to build. They did that stealth groundbreaking, but the Supreme Court ruled with the church and said, yep, keep building. Had they ruled a different way, the church would have had to take everything down. So Mabee sided with the county and the church in July, saying they could go ahead. But now she's saying, let's just put a stay on everything. And the case is headed to the Supreme Court. Now, since her July ruling, the work has begun. As we saw there, pictures of construction, and the neighbors have asked her to stop the construction until the court makes the decision. And unbelievably, she said yes. They said, the lawyer for the residents said, if this temple gets substantially built during the presidency of this appeal, how do we remedy? How do we go in and then ask for the church to tear it down? And he said he wanted the judge to preserve the status quo, which is no construction as long as the appeal is ongoing. Now, the attorney for the church said the first words out of Mr. Mansfield's mouth, that is the attorney for the residents, were, "We need to preserve the status quo here." And he then mischaracterized the status quo, because from the church's point of view, the church has had the right to build for a long time, but has delayed kind of in deference to all of these court proceedings. So here's the interesting part. It says, Jordan said the court could require a bond from the residents if it is granted a stay. That means that the residents would have to put up the money, that the church is going to claim that they're going to be losing by not being able to build. Delaying the temple by up to 18 months would add between $7.8 million and $11.4 million to construction costs. We have the right to build the temple, said the church's lawyer, not build it next year. We have the right to build it today. But maybe disagreed and said, and the lawyer said that possibly the church is going to ask, for the injunction to be overturned, and the residents just have to post a bond of $10,000. But this is interesting because did you catch that 18 months? It could be a couple years before this even goes to the Supreme Court. And right now, the church is not allowed to build. Now, they could ask for that to be overturned. That might be something. And it's possible, I don't know if it's true or not, they could be asked to put the ground back the way it was, right? Fill in that hole, fill up that water. So I don't know what's going to happen, but it's interesting that in this case, unlike Cody, the judge said, yep, no building until we sort this whole thing out. So we'll see.
I'll tell you my 2 cents here. First off, forever, the church has been able to do whatever it wanted with temple building. And when people, I think there was a temple in California in like the 80s or something, where there was some ruckus about it. But for the most part, the church could keep all of that quiet, sort it out maybe locally. Those days have come to an end, and it's gotten so bad now that even in Utah, where you think the church would just have a free pass to do whatever the hell it wants, because it's always had a free pass to do whatever it wants, that suddenly, even in Utah, it is running into problems with local citizens, with local governments, when it tries to just do what it wants in ways that don't seem like they're quite on the up and up.
Yep. No, you're not wrong. And in fact, what we're seeing, I know that Generally Unquotable, who's an amazing reporter and has great access to news, she showed a town council meeting, I think it was the Springfield, Missouri temple, or it was somewhere in Missouri, where the person who went up to address the town council would not give the name of the organization that he represented it. It was just a religion. And they kept asking, who are you representing? Well, it's just a religious organization. They are not even saying their name in some places. So that is fascinating to me. I don't know if it'll make a difference, but so yeah, here's the little post that I got in Costco, a temple with a stop sign around it. But again, they will build this eventually. This is going to be an opulent, spectacular showcase temple. And I think it's interesting, if you notice, it seems like temples are divided into 2 different classes. There's this kind of a temple, which is just going to be temple to the stars. Several general authorities and apostles own land and have houses right there, actually in the neighborhood that's protesting the temple. So, this is the destination. And then you have smaller temples, like say a Cody, Wyoming, or, something like that. And I even predict maybe even another class of temple that, is more like a meeting house. I think they're going to have to pivot in order to build as many temples as they have announced. Now, I've calculated it. They can only build about 6 to 8 temples a year. So just like always, nothing has changed because it's so centralized. And I've talked to different architects that have worked for the temple before. They're like, yep, everything has to run up the chain of it's so centralized. They cannot, scale this. So in order to perhaps, maybe 10 temples or something a year, which still would take 30 years to finish the ones announced now, not even counting the ones that they're going to announce at conference in a few weeks. I think maybe they'll start putting out temples that are extremely meeting house-like, that might be an answer to just kind of, especially in other countries, kind of push things through. So it's fascinating to watch the church pivot and try to solve these issues, but 200 temples announced, only 28 built. There's a backlog. forever.
Yeah. Another issue that the church has to solve is some publicity issues that it's got going on. I'll just note here in the next story. Thank you, by the way, for bringing that to us. And I know you always start off these stories, Rebecca, by saying people are probably tired of these temple updates. I don't think so. I think people really enjoy these temple updates. And I think it's fascinating to see how the church and what it wants to do and what it wishes it could do unquestioned out in the world and even in its own backyard in Utah, and what the local citizens and governments are doing when they start to realize that something isn't right. And so, folks, I'd love it if you put in the comments what your thoughts are, but I'm going to guess that most of you are deeply appreciative of the news that Rebecca brings us over the temples.